Time to start the reel. Welcome to this TJHTalks virtual table hosted by the Taube Center and POLIN Museum's TISH Festival. We're delighted that you're joining us here or on our YouTube channel. And we look forward, during this episode, pop-up episode, if you will, to providing you with food for thought and piquing your palate as our guests share their experiences with Ashkenazi cuisine, tradition, and transmission. Our conversation will run approximately 45 minutes, followed by time for a few questions from you, our audience. Please submit your questions in the chat section. And it's now my honor and pleasure to welcome our guests, Zoë Kanan, co-founder of Elbow Bread, Naama Shefi, founder of the Jewish Food Society, and Sam Silverman, New York's Bagel Ambassador, and our partner and colleague from POLIN, Franciszek Bojanczyk, who will open our program. Franek.
Thank you. I'm so glad that we can organize yet another talk together. I'm honored to be joined virtually by our friends from New York. We've been together for a couple of days, and we were exploring, and we are exploring together various Jewish food, which is one of the best examples of bonds and connection. For the old country, Poland, and the new country, for those that many friends of Polish Jews, New York. POLIN Museum recently opened a new exhibition for core exhibition, entitled Bonds, and it's about those bonds that's very often shape of different foods, a cheesecake or a gefilte. These are examples of things that people who are Polish Jews brought with them to different places: Australia, United States, South America. And this year, we decided to devote the whole edition of our annual Jewish Food Festival, the TISH Festival, to food connections between the descendants of Polish Jews and the old country of Poland. We entitled this edition of the festival the Roots Festival, because we are exploring the roots, not only the roots of different Ashkenazi foods, but also the roots of vegetables that make up different staples of Ashkenazi cuisine. We're so happy that we were able to bring for this festival Sam, Zoë, and Naama. And for them, we'll be talking about this tonight or today. For two of them, this is their first time to Poland, and I hope that together with our museum, together with the Taube Center, and together with the TISH Festival, we are able to show you something new and explore together the connections between New York and Warsaw. So I'm so looking forward to the conversation today and questions that all of you might have. And if you haven't been to our museum, if you haven't been to the Bonds Gallery yet, please do come. We have 8 movies featured. 2 out of 6 are dedicated to Jewish food. Thank you, Halise, for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Franek. So I kind of feel like I should put on an apron in advance of this conversation and get my fork and knife. And Sam, Zoe, and Naama, again, thank you for joining us. And each of you is an acclaimed transmitter of Ashkenazi culinary culture. But for two of you, this is your first time in Poland. So would you each share your experiences of exploring Poland, the Polish roots of well-known delicacies? What was inspiring? What was surprising? What was kind of new? Naama, will you start us off?
Sure. So first of all, I would just say that this entire experience is extremely meaningful and exciting for me, and I'm just starting to process. So I'm very grateful to be here and to share it with you. So I don't know if so surprising, but yes, I think the most surprising or interesting thing for me is the seasonality. And like, of course, I read in books and I work with food, so I knew about it, but I never experienced how vibrant and seasonal the food is, and even just like from the morning and treated every morning. Like one day we had one with raspberries and another with plums, and I can only imagine the strawberries and the peaches, and it's just so lush. And another concept that we learned there is so dobre, so balanced and not too sweet like we oftentimes experience in the States. And this is just very inspiring to me. Another thing that it is surprising to me is that I haven't encountered cholent, which to me, this is like the most Ashkenazi Jewish food. Like I don't think there is more, another Jewish dish that is more Jewish than cholent. And it's interesting to me that I haven't encountered or talked with people, and that's it, yet. But again, just a few days here.
Yeah. I'll add something to that, and I also agree with a lot of what Naama said. The seasonality. I mean, we've spent a lot of time at the various markets here in Warsaw, and from nearly the moment after we got off the plane, we arrived at a market that was in a former fortress, and just we're immediately immersed in this historic place that has also been kind of revitalized and repurposed for this really kind of pure gathering of shopping for food. And we had a sort of meal there as well that featured everything from the market. So that was just an initial kind of thrust into the seasonality of the city. And I'll add that something surprising for me, so that was very inspiring off the top, and something surprising to me, I think, is the enthusiasm locally for a lot of these, for me as a baker, a lot of the baked goods that have Polish roots that I'm baking in New York. To find enthusiasm for those in the place where they're from, the Americanized version of these things, it's unusual because, it's typically you don't travel to from the US to the country of origin for something for cooking in America and find an appreciation for that version. Often it's, I think of Italian American cuisine, for example, comparison. So yeah, that was very surprising and also endearing.
And I totally, the thing that inspired me the most about this trip is very similar, is this enthusiasm for these foods that are a part of traditional Jewish culture, were removed from the country due to the historical events that have happened here, but are now starting to make some sort of a comeback. And so with bagels, for example, we tried 4 different variations of bagels throughout this trip, none of which was the same. And I think a few had quite a bit of room for improvement, but that to me was inspiring because it shows that there's this interest and this momentum and this opportunity to reintroduce these foods that have their roots in this country and to bring them back in a very meaningful way. So yeah, it seems like there's a canvas here, like there's something to be done here in Warsaw, if not the rest of Poland, to kind of reintegrate these foods that have been historically a big part of this country.
Well, thank you all for sharing those insights already. We're all ready for more. And we'll come back to something that you've all alluded to about returning the roots to their roots. And it's something that we're all very grateful for and would like to talk more about. So, Naama, as the founder of the Jewish Food Society, please shed some light on how food, its preparation and adaptation, connects generations across time and place.
So, I think about our recipes as our cultural DNA. And I would just share that the Jewish Food Society, our work is to preserve and celebrate and push forward Jewish culinary heritage, not just from not just Ashkenazi traditions, but from all around the world. And so I think about food as a clock that reminds us our roots and our tradition. And, I'm a secular person, but Jewish food is almost like my religion. This is how I practice my Judaism, and this is how I think about the cooks and the people in the generations before me. So I think it's an extremely emotional and powerful medium to connect not only with someone's personal family, but with the larger Jewish community. And the bonds are so strong because we all know when we cook for someone, we put so much time and intentions and, focus and love into that. So the joy is infectious. And I think that it goes very deep.
Thank you. Naama, I'm just thinking about that ingredient, which you just shared, love, and the passion for that particular dish and what it's meant before and what it means now. And we'll talk a little bit later in our conversation about how you transmit a recipe and what happens to that recipe and the stories as it's handed down or handed over, which is, as you pointed out, so much part of Jewish culture. It's so much part of every culture in terms of tradition and transmission. So, Sam, I just want you to know, I've shared this with you, but I'm a real believer in bagels. I often refer to them as edible lifesavers. They bring a lot of comfort. So how do you find the traditional Polish version and the Polish bagels and bialys? I know we'll get to Zoe too. How do they connect with what you're sort of giving over, what you're sharing in New York and beyond, with those that originate here?
Sure. So we were not actually able to find a traditional Polish obwarzanki, which is originated in Krakow and apparently is still very common there, but not quite as common in Warsaw. And so we sought it out, but we're unable to find one. So that is actually great because it is a perfect excuse for another trip back to Poland and to Krakow to explore some more. And same with the bialy. There were no bialys to be found, nor in Warsaw, or as we understand in Białystok, where bialys originated from. And so again, there's this absence of the foods that originated here that is the exciting opportunity to bring back. But to build off of Naama's point of tradition and recipes and being passed down from generation to generation, I mean, that is really the story of the bagel. It was brought to New York by Polish Jews who fled their homes here because of the pogroms, because of persecution, searching for a better life for them and their families. And they banded together. They formed a union. They conducted their meetings exclusively in Yiddish. They only allowed their sons into the union because they wanted to pass that tradition along. And it is because of that, of that transmission of the knowledge and the craftsmanship that has gone from generation to generation that made New York such a prolific center for bagels. My number one FAQ, is it the water that makes bagels great? It is not the water. It is that cultural heritage. And so I'm being here with Zoe, who's such a fantastic bialy baker. My mind is racing with the possibilities of returning to Poland with someone who has that knowledge and the skill to be able to reintroduce these foods to a population that once counted this as a daily bread. And so I'm just terrifically excited to continue to pass that down to a new generation and hopefully inspire Polish bakers, Jewish and Gentile alike, to carry that flame and continue it on.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you all. Let's go, Zoe. As sharing or breaking bread together is a custom that crosses cultures, what intrigued you most about the variety of Polish breads? Did you expect that challah would be so widely accessible and popular to buy?
Yeah, I mean, I had an awareness of that challah, or here in Poland, often known as halka, I believe, but I'm not sure if there's a difference there. I had an awareness that it was widely available here and considered to be quite common bread, but I know that it is in a different format from how we see it as New Yorkers. I found it to be sweeter, and then it often has a streusel on top, which I typically streusel is something I endorse, but I was surprised to find it in that format. So yeah, it's funny because I think of, although challah, when I bake it, it does have honey and some natural sweetness to it. And it's very popular in the States, as we know, for French toast. And I think that's broadly how the American population experiences it. So, it's a mainstream bread in the US, and it appears here as well. I was also very excited about discovering rye bread here, because I have a deep love and appreciation for rye. And I was realizing that rye that we're using now in the bakery at Elbow Bread is it's grown in New York State, and it's milled by a new mill in Brooklyn that we're using, called Brooklyn Granary and Mill. And it's a Polish variety of rye that was created. I did a little bit of research in 1976, I think, by the Polish plant breeding network, I think it's called. And so that was, another way that I think I'm able to kind of connect and discover, using Polish you know, I don't know what the right word is. It's not only just the inspiration for and tribute to Polish baking and elbow, but it's also literally the type of grain that we're using. You could even trace back. So yeah, the rye bread here is just, I mean, we've enjoyed it with many of our meals, and I think, you know, the chew and the density, I really like the breads that have the whole rye berry in them, because I like that texture. And we had an incredible herring experience here where we just had, I mean, the photos of our meal there alone are great. And the experiencing these different kinds of herring and also this Polish, this fish, it was like a paprika and rice and tomato fish spread, or almost like pate. We had that for the first time here, and all really enjoyed that. And, you know, it seems you can have that without rye bread. So finding bread to be just an essential part of life here, it's an easy way to connect.
So now that we've had a little taste, let's take a deeper dive. You've encountered other what we would call Jewish foods in the States. I grew up thinking that borscht was Jewish and herring was Jewish and gefilte fish was Jewish, maybe it is. So how did you feel when you're encountering on a Polish menu such, you know, kind of iconic symbols of obviously Ashkenazi Jewish culture, finding it again like you did with the rye flour and the rye bread and the other, you know, the herring that you mentioned. How did you feel, you know, encountering them here? And what was different about how they were presented from your memory or from the work that you do or that you serve at home? Sam?
Yeah, I'll start with, one of my big takeaways from this trip is how complex the relationship between Jews and Poland has been for the last several hundred years. And we learned this a lot going through the POLIN Museum. And part of that complexity is due to the changing nature of what Poland was as a country. Like it itself has its own very complicated history. Of course, us as Jews, we have our own very complicated history, and yet it's still interwoven like inexorably throughout the past 1,000 years, if not longer than that. And so with that context, like, I guess I shouldn't have been so surprised that there was so much crossover between Polish food, Ashkenazi food, things that I eat at home, and things that people here eat at home. But there's an incredible amount of crossover. And I just think it goes to show that food is this ultimate connector. And it's this way to bridge these divides between people and cultures. And yes, Poles and Jews may have not gotten along at certain points in history, but we can all sit together at the dinner table and we can have a familiar meal together. And that is the building, that's the foundation of a strong relationship that I think we can move forward with.
Thank you, Sam. Bringing a whole new perspective to the table, a shared table, a common table. Do we each bring something? Thank you. Naama.
I think that there is, when we talk about Jewish food, we talk about Jewish people who lived all around the world. And wherever they lived, they created these micro cuisines that were a representation of the local food traditions and the terroir and the people and the politics and the environment in constant negotiation with Jewish laws of kashrut, Shabbat, and Jewish holidays. And I think that the result of that is something extremely unique and interesting. So that's always my perspective. So it's not something that is surprising to me. I understand the commonality, and I curious by that and respect that. But it's just wonderful to encounter these flavors here. I think that it would be, it's always, I think the backbone of Jewish food is many times we see it in holiday cooking and Shabbat. And I think that these examples are very unique and interesting.
Thank you. More food for thought. Pun intended. Zoe.
Yeah, I mean, something that I think of off the top, and this is sort of very specific, but are potato pancakes, because that's something that, we grew up having. And for me, it was certainly a highlight of most holiday tables, because my grandmother knew that as many children, that was one of my favorite dishes. So they showed up a lot. And I think we have that available in restaurants in New York. And here I found them, we had them in milk bars, and found them with toppings and served in ways that I hadn't experienced before. So we had some yesterday with spinach and cheese on top, and none of us had that before. And that was our favorite thing on the table. I mean, how could that be bad? But it was delicious. And they had others on the menu with, there was one served with smoked cheese. There was one that was just Hungarian style. I don't know what that means. But it looked like it had like maybe some kind of paprika based something on top. And, I think when I think of eating a potato pancake, a Jewish potato pancake, I think of having it with applesauce and sour cream. For me, both at the same time. So yeah, it was
interesting. Both together.
Yes, put together.
Because one of the questions in the chat section is, are you sour cream people or applesauce people? Apparently, you bring them together at the same time, which sort of obviates that question. But the two of you will have to answer that. Go on.
Community condiment supporter. So it was fun to taste something that was so familiar and comforting, totally comfort food, and to have it in this slightly new way.
We'll bring it back to New York.
Exactly.
Yes. It's gonna be spinach
and cheese. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Zoe, for bringing up the fact that there are these staple foods, or what we think of as staple foods, and the debate, of course, between latke and hamantaschen, and what is more, and that's a very academic take. We're going to do a show. One of our TJH talks will have to address that. But this idea that staple foods that, we weren't using spinach and cheese 50 years ago, right? But all of the new other cuisines, as you all pointed out, have come, and it's the same pancake, but it takes on its own identities, even within one menu, and certainly at Jewish tables across the globe.
Yes.
You mentioned something about comfort food, and I kind of wanted to come back to that in terms of, I mean, we're focusing now obviously on Ashkenazi food, but that's the Jewish food. The Jewish table is global in all places. Obviously, the Jews lived and live. We've adopted, shared, as you all pointed out. So, but I've been thinking, you brought up about comfort food, the bagel, the potato pancake. How does that play out, in what you do in terms of sort of looking at bagels further, Sam, or Zoe, in your baking, or Naama, when you're thinking about cataloging and sort of, keep, as you say, preserving and promoting that it's not just behind, it's not just somewhere, written down, but it's out there for people to access it. So how much does comfort play in the Ashkenazi, on the Ashkenazi table?
I mean, I guess I could speak to my experience just as someone who makes these things, and things being baked goods, and serves them and sells them to a broad audience. The bakery is on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, so it is historically an area that's an enclave of Jewish life and community. And it's interesting because we have such a variety of customers, and for some people, they come to us because they're seeking out these comfort foods, and they know that, or have heard that we're baking a knish, or we're baking a bialy with sort of a fresh kind of artisan approach. And I think maybe it's one part skepticism, because everyone comes with an opinion if these foods already, or an expectation. And then one part, comfort, and you're just happy to have access to and be able to enjoy these things. So many of our customers are seeking us out for that experience of comfort, because I think bialys and knish are not something that people are making in their homes. It's not like a latke or whatever. This is something that people, I think, historically and still today are going out for. So although maybe there are some there's some very ambitious people making these things at home, not to exclude them. But yeah, and then the other half of our customer base are people that maybe are experiencing these things for the first time. So it's exciting for me to get to offer these things up as comfort foods that we know, and expose them to people who have not had prior experiences with them, but get to experience, the comfort, hopefully, that they can bring.
Thank you. Sam, as I referred to the bagel as an edible lifesaver, I know I'm imposing my perspective on you and our audience here. How do you see bagels and their proliferation, and also that they've also added so many flavors to the sort of, I would say, original or standard bagel, beyond rye and beyond, there's chocolate chip. I'm sure there are things, of course, I'm not aware of yet, need to be reminded of. So how about the bagel as a source of comfort and home?
Yeah, I think the bagel is one of the ultimate comfort foods because it can be customized in such a unique way among foods, where you can pick the perfect bagel flavor and the cream cheese spread and the toppings that go on it, and you can make a sandwich that is truly unique to you. I was a math major in college. I've crunched the numbers, and at a standard bagel shop in New York City, you can create 168 million unique combinations out of what's available on the menu. And out of all of those, there is one perfect combination for each and every one of us. To have that level of ownership over of something that really feels uniquely created for you, it generates these complex emotions, nostalgia, and happiness, and all these things that I think are what are wrapped up in the term comfort food. And so I think that's the beautiful thing about the bagel, and why we're seeing it spread and to countries and communities throughout the world. We're going through a bagel renaissance right now, is because it can be so customizable to the local culture and cuisine, and it can become a comfort food for anybody in the world. It's really this really amazing canvas that artisans like Zoe can go wild with and create things that tap into the tastes and desires of their customers and their community to bring something unique and special into the world.
It's so interesting because I listened to both of you, and like, to me, and it's a new thought, but when I think about comfort food, I think about familiarity in home cooking and something like that connect me with my grandparents and my Polish roots. So I'm thinking about, like, I'm just thinking about Rosh Hashanah, right? That I just hosted at my home, and yes, I love to cook different things, and there were many salads and things from very global flavors. But the chicken soup with the kreplach, like, I won't mess with that.
Yeah.
That's comfort food, and I feel very, I'm the same with herring and with chulent, and I can't think of another, like, more comfort food for me than these dishes.
Those dishes.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, from year to year, how much would you change the menu?
That's exactly the point. So I won't change the chulent is not for Rosh Hashanah, but I won't change the chicken soup and the kreplach, like, for the holidays and these staples. Like, that's
what makes it feel like a holiday. Yeah. And I think it's comfort foods in different ways too, because that's, cooking in the home, and that's, I think the main way to experience that. And then also, finding comfort in something that you can't make yourself as well.
But I definitely find comfort with your bialy, as you know.
Absolutely. Well, thank the three of you for really thinking about this. And I think you're right. If I was trying to think of what are my comfort foods, and I mean, used to be bagels, but when in Rome, but you'll be bringing bagels back. But you've all talked about either coming to get it or making it. That people are looking. They want to connect with food as comfort, and as you said, family or tradition. And it's wonderful that people are now finding these recipes accessible, or they're sort of going, whoa, look what my mom left me, or my grandmother, and suddenly, it's on my table, which is extraordinary. Or that the proliferation, I didn't make note of the number of possibilities because I was not a math major, but I understand that the possibilities of creating your own bagel or making your own, it's really, you all resonate with this idea of connection and ownership, which I think all cultures have in terms of food, but also bringing something new to the table, right? I mean, Naama, you're bringing some new salad or something else, another taste. I'm sure, Zoe, you're experimenting with other breads or other flavors or other twists or spices, and obviously, Sam, in terms of the number of bagels that are possibly on the market, you suddenly have this array of. You're just looking for the schmears, the spreads, or what you're putting on top. So thank you. So there's a question actually on the chat that says, how, and you've already alluded to it, but I think this would be a nice question to address for the three of you, is how can we honor and preserve the recipes of our ancestors the best way, and how to pass them on in the best way?
Support the Jewish Food Society, of course.
Of course.
So I think about it in two ways. The culinary method, which is, of course, extremely important, and not less important, the story and the history that are attached to that. So if possible, when you go to preserve a recipe from a family member, if you can, spend time with the person in their home kitchen and really invest the time, that's ideal. And I would even get the recipe in advance of this cooking session or cooking visit together, and look for things that that you want to observe in terms of time and technique. Just think about it a little bit before you actually cook, because many things will come up. And of course, once you have the cooking session, again, ideally in person, but if not, via Zoom or another video form, measure everything you can, right? And take photos and take videos, and write all of your learnings right there, and then spend the time after to really tweak it, and then try to make it again pretty soon after this experience, so your palette and your notes can still be fresh in your mind. And it's true even to the most simple recipe that we think, oh, this is, so easy, and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but it really matters when you measure and when you observe with all of the details. So that's about the culinary portion. And of course, when you are with someone in their own kitchens, and it's such an intimate space to collect information. So I would recommend to ask many questions, try to ask emotional questions and real questions, get the names right, the dates right, the cities, like all of the information that it's maybe obvious, but it's really not. Like, even now I learned that even here in Poland, like even with my own family, I have so many unknown questions to answer. So that's in a nutshell, I think that would be my advice.
Naama, thank you. Zoe.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I got lost in Naama's response. I was hanging on her.
We all were. No. The question was about what's the best way to preserve, and the best way to pass on. Well, whether, and as Naama pointed out, it was the culinary, but it's the stories. So, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was fortunate to be able to work with Naama and the Jewish Food Society to tell some stories from my family's recipes for honey cake in particular, timely, and the experience of baking these cakes with my grandmother. And we lived in Texas, and she was from New York, so our family was Jewish family was there, and making these cakes and shipping them back to New York, and for a taste of the Texas honey cake. But I think what Naama described, it's has the functionality, of course, of preserving the recipe, and it's also an opportunity for stories and for learning new things. I think the process of being in the kitchen together, there's no better time to chat or to talk than being in sharing space in the kitchen. And I think it's just the act of doing the work with your hands. I think it opens up new pathways and those like sensory experiences as well. So I think it's the perfect opportunity to kind of commune and share something together. So that's, of course, not everyone has the opportunity to do that. And I think that's why it's so important to preserve these recipes. But I think you can also, the Jewish Food Society archive gives you the opportunity to kind of trace recipes that might not even be yours, and to see those, experience those stories, and then get to cook yourself and have the chance to connect with maybe someone else's history, and in a way that's part of our own as Jewish people. So I think it's just the act of cooking Jewish recipes is the best way to continue to connect.
Sam, bagels made at home, it's a challenge. Also making sufgani, the donuts and putting the jam in it. I have nightmares still about that, but I tried. So tell us about
Yeah, if I can,
the bagel.
well, this is a question that I really struggle with almost on a daily basis, is how do we preserve tradition while welcoming in a new generation and an evolution of this food? There were, back in the days of the Bagel Bakers Union, there were very high standards, and there was a very strict process and recipe that you had to follow just to get into the union, because they wanted this food to be made in a very traditional way that could feed the Jewish community on the Lower East Side and beyond. And so now that the bagel has gone beyond the Jewish community and is being made by Gentiles across the world, we're seeing all these variations. When I said there's 168 million of them, I did not endorse all 168 million combinations, right? There's plenty among those that are sacrilegious or ashanda. And so it's this tension of, how do we pay homage to our ancestors and to the recipes that brought us to this point, while still respecting that people are going to take those and put their own creative twist on it. And where is that line in the sand, and who is responsible for drawing that line in the sand? And it's something that I don't have an answer to. And it's something that I truly think about and struggle with on almost a daily basis. So I'm very glad that we're opening up this conversation, because I get some help from my colleagues.
Yeah. Well, I personally, some people, of course, are traditionalists when it comes to these recipes, and it should be executed exactly the same way as, so-and-so made it. But I personally think that there is some room to, as long as you're not losing the sort of soul or core of the recipe, which, of course, I think you are the only one who can decide what that is. And I think there is some room to adapt these things to your tastes, your family's tastes, your friends' tastes, modern tastes. I think there's nothing wrong with that, because I think it's actually beautiful recipes passed down from family member to family member, friend to friend. That natural evolution that happens, and maybe it's forced by limited access or a change to a new location. But I think, it's not necessarily worthwhile pursuit to be obsessed with, needing to make this really traditional, perfectly revived dish. I think there is some room to put an extra, I think in a lot of these recipes, double the salt, for example. I think there is some room for incorporating personal flair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yet, when we have the Polish bagels, I just want them to taste the traditional New York, like that's what I want them to make.
Right.
So,
Okay.
That, I feel like that's more of a technical issue than a taste issue.
Yeah,
Well, I would love this conversation to continue, because you're talking a lot about how we transmit Jewish or any kind of heritage, and what do we choose or what is chosen. And you all said by whom? Who's making that decision about what goes in? Before we end, though, I would like to ask, to put to all three of you a question that Barbara Kirschenblatt, who is the chief curator of the POLIN Museum and an extraordinary culinary artist, preserver of history and sharer of extraordinary recipes and cookbooks. So the first question is actually directed at Zoe, but I think that this is a good way to sort of pull us together. So Barbara's question is, Zoe, is there anything you would not do to a bagel?
I mean, I will say that I think, and as Sam and Naama can both speak to this, I think it's true that the bagel has been tortured in many, many ways, in many places and environments. Anything I wouldn't do to a bagel. I mean, I will say, I have made bagels that I didn't think I would make. I was making an egg bagel, which I think is an under celebrated bagel personally. It is often made in shops in New York with, just with some yellow food coloring.
Yeah.
So I think I would not add food coloring to a bagel. I would say that's probably a good place to start. I will say that the rainbow bagel had a big moment, and I, endorse celebrating all things that rainbows represent. However, I don't think the bagel is maybe the best format to do that. But I made an egg bagel that had actual egg yolks added to it and is kind of this very interesting sort of challah bagel hybrid, and has a different texture, is, a little bit softer, different flavor. But I made a French toast bagel out of that, which I can't say I thought I was maybe more of a traditionalist when it came to bagels than that, but it was really delicious and it's a very big seller. So that has to be taken into account as well.
Sam's kind of going around the collar there thinking, Mike, but so Naama, what in the spirit of the question, what would you not do to or a bagel?
Or what bagel would you not eat?
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, the food coloring, I just 100% with that, and I don't know if I have anything to agree to add, but that's the food coloring is that's the line, right? Yeah,
that's the line.
Yeah.
So Sam, as the ambassador, do you have an embassy and all that too?
Working on it.
Yeah. So you, as the connoisseur of bagels in this conversation, so what would you find, I don't know, the least likely thing you would either add to a bagel or put on a bagel?
Generally sweet stuff. I'm personally more of a savory fan, even though I do enjoy a good French toast bagel from time to time. The thing that I advocate for the most is to never toast a fresh bagel, because the textural contrast between the crunchy outside and the soft, chewy inside is what makes it so uniquely delicious. So that's my stance, is you should never toast a fresh bagel. If it's, hot out the oven. If you are going to toast, the recommended method, rinse it under warm water, toast it whole for 5 to 8 minutes at 350 degrees, and then slice it afterwards. That rehydrates the crust while keeping the inside moist, preserves that beautiful textural contrast, and tastes almost as good as when it's fresh out the oven. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. Really, you have each brought extraordinary and wonderful perspectives, insightful thoughts, and we really appreciate not only what you shared, but how you shared it. I feel like we really are at a table with you. I'm sorry. I hope that we will get to join you in person at a common table. And we want to thank you for joining this sort of global shared table, whatever is on it that we each bring or our grandparents brought or to that table. And the notion that we share food is really wonderful. But I think all three of you would endorse the fact that sharing and exchanging recipes is one thing, but really eating together is really essential. And I hope that in the new year, as we begin the Jewish New Year and move into a series of holidays, celebrating a lot, either not eating food at all or eating an abundance of food, especially of the season, as you brought up in the beginning, Naama, the seasonality of food, that we do so shared with many friends and guests and people who we've just met. And we look forward to talking to you again. Your next visit in search of bialys and all sorts of things, because there's much more to look for. And we want to, I want to thank you for bringing that up. The other piece is we want to thank you for bringing things back. And we're grateful for POLIN and the Bonds Gallery, which really helps people to visualize and almost taste and, long ago recipes they didn't even know were theirs. And I think this restoration of a legacy that was torn or taken, and you are all preserving in one form or another, thank you for bringing it back. It's something that I think Poland and our Jewish communities are very grateful for. So
thank you.
It's been so inspiring to start the new year here. So
well, thank you. We feel the same. I want to thank our co-conspirators, our co-collaborators at POLIN and the TISH Festival for bringing the messages and the intrigues of Jewish food to a wide audience. And may it be a sweet new year. May we dip our apples in honey. I also wouldn't put honey on a bagel. I'm with the savory part of this. And hopefully you'll join us again for another session where I think we need to talk about whether it's the hamantaschen or the bagel or the latke that really exemplifies Jewish food. So to our audience, thank you for joining us. We're delighted that you're here. To our people our team that makes this happen behind the scenes, to Jakob and Kaya. And just to remind you, those of you who are watching, this show, TJHTalks, is supported solely by your contributions and donations. And we look forward to seeing you at the next episode at the end of October. So thank you all.
Thanks for
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.